Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the Public Safety Committee meeting of Monday, February 5th, 2024. Today we have two topics on our agenda. The first is an update on the crime statistics, and the second is an overview of the Anti-Hate Task Force recommendations related to public safety. And as we begin, I want to publicly thank once again Susan Farag for once again, as always, preparing a most informative packet for us. And unless the other committee members have any opening comments, I'm going to ask the panel to please introduce themselves, and then we're going to turn it over to Ms. Farag, who's going to walk us through the first topic. Please, if you, Assistant Chief.
Good morning, Assistant Chief Nicholas Augustine, Chief of Investigative Services Bureau.
Good morning, Marcus Jones, Chief of Police.
Good morning, Willie Parker Lone, Assistant Chief of Police, Chief of the Patrol Services Bureau.
Thank you all for being with us. Ms. Farag, please.
Good morning, everyone. This morning I'm going to do a bit of a brief overview of crime statistics for last year, 2023. Then I'm going to ask the department to comment on it, and they also have a PowerPoint to detail their crime prevention and suppression initiatives. As you know, the department's been short-staffed for several years now. There's a need to look at different ways to either redeploy staff, and they've done some of that over the past 6 months or so, or use civilianization as a way to maximize their resources, or use technology. So these, they'll talk a little bit about the initiatives that they've gotten underway in the past year or so. In terms of crime in 2023 overall, crime increased for the third year in a row. Everything was disrupted by COVID, as you know, due to the social lockdowns that we experienced. There was a flood of firearms into the community. People were very scared of upheaval and decided that they wanted to arm themselves, I suppose. Unfortunately, with that comes people who did not know how to secure guns, and many guns made it into the hands of people who meant to do, wrong things with them. So firearms continue to play a significant role in violent crime. Crimes against persons increased by 6.6% last year, and crimes against property increased by 10.9%. I just wanted to note that the way that the data is presented this year is a little bit different. It's in NIBRS format, and it used to be violent crime and nonviolent crime, and now it's crimes against persons and crimes against property. And really the biggest change there is that robbery, which I tend to think of as a violent crime against people, is now classified as a crimes against property. Some of the things that have been in the news.
Even if it involves a person?
I'm sorry?
Even if it involves a person?
Robbery does involve a person, but it's going after the property.
So robbery would
right.
involve, right?
So, some of the crimes that have been in the news that have been of concern in the community include auto thefts, and those spiked by 131% last year, and that was obviously fueled by the Hyundai and Kia thefts. Carjackings rose 28.6%. That does, comparatively speaking to jurisdictions like Washington, D.C., they have probably 10 times the number of carjackings we do. We had 19 carjackings in 2019, and we had 99 last year. So the increase is pretty large, but overall the total numbers are not that bad. Crimes against society, which include drug offenses, fell by 13.8%, and rape and other sex offenses as a whole dropped by 9%. Shoplifting is up by 38%. I did have a question which I wasn't able to ask the department ahead of time, but I know a lot of the big box stores that are experiencing shoplifting don't necessarily report it, so that may not be the most accurate reflection of what's going on. Part of the concern here is that overall nationally we're seeing a reduction in crime other than a few pockets. Washington, D.C. is one of those pockets where crime has increased as well, and of course, crime doesn't really know jurisdictional boundaries. In terms of firearms-related crime, in select crimes including aggravated assault, homicide, rape, robbery, the total number of firearms used has increased each year. In 2021, firearms were involved in about 22% of those crimes. That increased to about 24% of crimes in 2022, and it's up to 25% of crimes last year. That increase was primarily driven by robbery incidents. 46.3% of total robberies involved firearms. In terms of non-fatal shootings, there are 3 types of non-fatal shootings that are tracked by police. They include contact shootings where an individual is shot but does not die, non-contact shootings where shots were fired but no one was injured, and accidental discharge where it was unintentional and no injuries. There's a chart on page 5 that shows how those have changed over the past couple of years. Contact shootings remained fairly flat. It just went up by 1. Non-contact shootings, however, has gone up by 33%. Accidental discharges have gone up 73%, and total non-fatal contact shootings have increased by 28%. There's a map on page 5 to show you where homicides and contact shootings occurred in the county as well. In terms of recovered firearms, there's a chart on page 6 that shows there was a high total number of firearms in 2022 at 1,216. This year, that number fell to 997. Last year, there were 87 firearm offenses initiated on traffic incidents. Those offenses can include situations such as finding a firearm, someone pointing a firearm at the officer, or a firearm was thrown out of a vehicle window. In total, officers recovered 99 firearms during traffic incidents. In terms of crime against property, I've already mentioned auto theft went up 131%, stolen property went up 95%, shoplifting by 38%, and carjacking by 28.6%. Non-commercial robbery was up by 27.4%. There have also been some significant decreases in certain offenses, including forgery down by 50%, fraud and identity theft down by 28%, and commercial robbery down by almost 21%. The forgery and the fraud and identity theft really hit their peak right during COVID. I also have some information on victimization. In 2023, there were 10,399 identified victims of crime. Most of these are crimes against persons, but I asked that auto theft be included as well since there was such a huge increase over the past year. Of the 29 homicide victims last year, 20 were black, 7 were Latino, and 2 were white. Just 2 of the victims were under 18, but 10, or 34% of them, were between the ages of 18 and 21. 86% of the homicide victims were male. There's a chart on page 8 that further breaks out information for you. When we look at other types of crime, most victims are over 21. Slightly more than half of crime victims are female, and in terms of race and ethnicity, the largest group of victims were black, who comprised 31% of all victims. White victims totaled 26% of all victims, and Hispanic and Latino victims totaled 22%. Asians represent about 3.9% of all victims, and the race and ethnicity of 16% of the victims were unknown. I have a few discussion issues listed on page 8, but I'm also happy to turn it over to the police department to go through their PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you very much. Why don't we turn it over to you, and then we'll ask air questions.
Sure.
Please.
So good morning.
Good morning.
So I would like to just address the discussion issues that Ms. Farag has noted for the council. She has noted that in this particular packet that we have 1,280 allocated officers for our department. She notes there are 116 current vacancies. I always tell folks that is always a moving number. I've been updated this morning that we have 128 vacancies in the Patrol Services Bureau alone. So I think we're a little higher in our current numbers of vacancies. But the good news is we just started our recruit class that started last Monday. We have 23 recruits that are in this current class. So we'll talk more about that with staffing in a little bit. I did want to also note that, we continue to explore other ways to utilize our professional staff in order to free up our sworn officers. And that's something that, again, we'll continue to have discussions about strategies. One of the things that I have put on the table, I don't think it's gotten to council yet, but it's going to be a request for a retired officers program. I think it will be vitally important for us to be able to, and we have many positions throughout the department that we can utilize support that will free up our patrol officers from some duties that they are sometimes tasked with for hours at a time. That limits our ability to respond to our normal calls for service. Is something that traditionally we've done in a variety of different ways, a variety of different assignment. So with our retired officers program, we're looking to bring back retired officers on a contract to allow them to, again, to take care of some of those tasks. And that is one way to do that as well. So we're constantly having these conversations. There are times I am, and I think I've presented this to the council, to this committee before, where we have vacancies in some of our specialized units, primarily like in our Investigative Services Bureau or our Field Services Bureau that we have support personnel. When those vacancies sometimes occur, we don't automatically give the blessing to fill those positions due to the fact that many of those positions are actually filled by patrol officers. So when you take a patrol officer and put them in a specialized unit, you're decreasing your numbers in the patrol section. So patrol, that's something we've done for many years, and I felt like, patrol has kind of been bleeding. The Patrol Services Bureau been bleeding as a result of that. So then we kind of give everyone to have to somewhat feel a little bit of the pain about suffering and to increase the workload amongst the others. So right now it's working pretty well, but what I think I really do focus on when we have crucial positions that are that really we look at the workload, like for example the domestic violence unit or our major crimes and homicide division. When those vacancies occur, I really do put an emphasis on filling those slots because the workload is heavy, and as well as is a very important work that needs to be filled. So so those are done on a case-by-case basis. Also want to talk about where, we'll talk about more of it later in the presentation, where we're looking at technology. Again, using this as a force multiplier. We're seeing incredible results as a result of this with our cameras in different areas of the county, our automated license plate readers, where we're finding stolen cars, carjacked vehicles in real time, and the use of our Violent Crime Information Center that I will definitely talk about, and of course the drone as the first responder. That's been, again, we'll talk about some of the positive outcomes of that. What challenges, if any, are we're facing regarding criminal investigations? I think the biggest hurdle that we have right now is when the state last year introduced the Child Interrogation Protection Act. And I just want to speak on this for a second. Most of the time, people think that when we interrogate suspects or people that, particularly young people that are involved in crimes, it's for the mere attempt for us to obtain a confession. And that's no matter what, they think once we get the confession, that's all we want, and case closed and we move on. But intelligence and information that's gathered from those interviews and interrogations is valuable. And why do I say it's valuable? It's valuable in so many ways when you talk about young people being involved in violent crimes, as an example. And when they're involved in violent crimes, whether it be involved in a gang, whether it be involved in a beef with other neighborhoods, those things allow us to be able to get more in a preventive mode, reach out to our partners that we work with in the community, such as HHS and the Street Outreach Network, that we can actually go and try to find some intervention techniques. They utilize their abilities to communicate with many of these young people. But when you're not having the ability to speak with young people, you can't get the answers to the questions because you can't ask the questions. Because the reality is, and this has been noted, that anytime you contact an attorney or have the individual contact an attorney, they're not going to give a statement. I've talked to many attorneys, and attorneys have noted that, that would be almost malpractice on the part of an attorney for that to be, that's going to happen. So that puts us behind the 8 ball a little bit. Someone asked the other day about how we could work on some strategies and work with young people on making sure those who might be involved, for example, in stealing cars, how could we have some interactions of prevention? I very much would love to be able to come up with those strategies, really understanding, and I think this is a very important part. You need to understand, why are young people doing what they're doing? And for us, we don't know the answers because we don't get any feedback from those who are involved in this. And it's because of, again, the Child Interrogation Act. That's a pause. So I think if there's some conversation moving forward about, again, and when we look at what is focused on preventing crimes in the first place, which is a very important part of our mission, in order to make sure that there's, again, the opportunity for our folks in many other aspects, and to work with other partners, whether it's the Department of Juvenile Services, whether it's the State's Attorney's Office, whether it's HHS. There's so many different avenues that we could utilize this ability. So I just note that as those are some of the things that we're looking at as we look at trying to, again, decrease crime in some of these areas. What are some of our plans moving forward to address crime? Again, we're looking at expanding with more personnel the ability to have our Violent Crime Information Center open longer and communicating. Our other joining jurisdictions, so the Metropolitan Police has just started their real-time crime center. We are trying to work in collaboration with them, as other regional partners are, in order to be able to share information and intelligence about these things, because, again, we know that there are no boundaries when many of these individuals are committing some of these crimes. Also, we're looking at leveraging our Drone as First Responder program, expanding that. And we'll talk about that more, and then we'll continue to focus on some new recruitment initiatives, I think, that will also help our department from that standpoint. So I'll pause there if anybody has any questions up to this point, or I'll move right to the PowerPoint.
Well, I think probably, why don't you go to the PowerPoint, and then we can. Sure.
Okay, all right. So when we look at our Patrol Services Bureau, which is led by Assistant Chief Willie Parker Lone, we note that there are several components. Of course, this is the largest bureau of the police department. It's our 6 police districts. And again, they are your first responders, and there's a variety of things that they work with. Particularly in many of our districts, we have central business district units that work within, for example, Silver Spring, Wheaton. We also have one in Germantown in order to focus on a variety of different issues because of again, heavy population and the needs of the communities. We have district community action teams that focus on problems within the community, in the particular district, I should say. And community operations unit, also working hand in hand with the commanders in order to have some efficiency, and most importantly, our special assignment teams. We have officers in each of the districts that work in a plainclothes status. They're actually tasked with actually going out, detecting crime real time, seeing things happen in place. There was an example of this in the 3rd district a few weeks ago when officers actually observed an illegal handgun transaction that occurred that was real time, and they were able to arrest those individuals who had come up from Virginia to sell an illegal AR-15 to an individual here in the county in Silver Spring. We also, again, we meet weekly to talk about our crime trends. We talk about the data, our strategies in order to look at best resource deployment strategies. We share information amongst the districts to include our specialized units. And again, we look at enhancing our police presence where we need to, often through what we call a high visibility detail. So we look at this can be used for crime, but this can also be utilized for traffic issues. I know this, for example, as everyone likes to highlight whenever we have these the car rallies and we have these street takeovers. There have been many times over the past year that these street rallies were attempted to occur here in Montgomery County. And to be quite frank, it was never broadcast on social media. When I say broadcast, because why? It never happened. And it didn't happen because we were able to get information in front of the car rally occurring, whether it was occurring in downtown Silver Spring, or they plan to meet in Burtonsville, or they plan to meet in Rockville, or the many different areas across the county. And we work with our other partners from Maryland State Police, Gaithersburg and Rockville City Police, in order to have more resources. And the duty commanders would move the resources to those particular areas in order to have high visibility, have officers with their lights on. And when those individuals saw that there was a heavy police presence, they went to other counties or other parts of the state. So we've been effective in some ways when we are able to get that information ahead of time. So that's just something that we also focus upon. When we look at, again, we will put together special details, particularly around the holiday season, when we know many of the stores that are at risk, for example, with sometimes organized shoplifters in order to deter these types of events from happening. And of course, during the holiday season, we also have our holiday alcohol task force that we generally run from just before the Thanksgiving holiday all the way through New Year's. And that's been, again, very effective, even with less officers than we've normally had. And truly, we miss Sergeant Kep this year because he was one of our leaders in that particular detail. But again, we have the commanders are they are focused on their crime within the districts. They focus on particular areas that they have issues with, that they get feedback, whether it's from apartment rental management, or it could be from HOAs, it could be from the business community. But they are always working with directed and proactive patrol enforcement and patrols, because the officers who work in each general area, those are their assigned areas on a daily basis. So they know more about the community and their interactions, and they are the ones who are out there working in a proactive manner, who may be making arrests as well as seizing guns, etc. And again, community engagement is very, very important in what we've been doing in our community service. Officers who are assigned to each of the district stations, they are those direct contacts with our community associations, business associations, in order to be able to work on some issues such as providing security threat assessments, educating the community about different crimes for preventive measures, as well as one program we had in the 4th district where we had a problem with catalytic converters being stolen. And so we provided an etch and catch program. Well, the individuals could bring their vehicles in and actually be provided with a kit that allowed them to actually put a serial number on their actual catalytic converter in the event that it was stolen. And again, we always we encourage our commanders to be innovative in their own ways. I'll give kudos, for example, to Commander McBain. Commander McBain has created in the 3rd district what he calls an adopted neighborhood initiative. And what he's done is he's actually created and worked with our technology department to actually have officers who are actually going in, providing patrols in the community. Often we hear from the community, I never see an officer. Right? They'll often state that to us. Well, the officer, what they actually will do is actually document on their phones, on this app, of the time that they spent in a particular residential area in order to show that they were actually patrolling in that area. So whether it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the morning, right? This is now being captured, and Commander McBain has actually initiated this, and we want to see this expand throughout the department. But it's also allowed for Commander McBain, when he goes to community meetings, to show that to those particular communities of how much time is being spent actually patrolling in their particular community. So it gives them a little bit more information to chew on. And again, as we talked about a lot about working in partnership and the communication piece, that's very important. And, as we've talked to this committee before about the issues that we have, for example, in downtown Silver Spring with the nightlife, right, and how Captain Reed has really been doing a fabulous job at helping to coordinate some efforts in downtown Silver Spring, working with their safety alliance, also working with, showing walking beats. They do a detail in areas around Thayer and Fenton Avenue, Georgia, in order to have a higher visibility. Camera trailers have been deployed on Thayer as well as on Ellsworth near at Veterans Plaza, and of course we know about our drone program. But much of that is really about really being proactive policing. But we also, in our other districts, 2D, Pike and Rose, right? We have nightlife there. Commander Dom has done a really good job. There have been some quality of life issues at Neville Street and Marinelli at the shelter. So done a lot of outreach there, working with the communities right surrounding in that general area. 4th District, Wheaton Plaza. And Glenmont Shopping Center as an example. We've got some issues there. I know Commander Smith has been working with not only those who work at Westfield Shopping Center. We have a lot around the business community around the metro. Costco, we've met with them with their concerns, and so those are real issues that need to have been focused upon. And then the 5th District, Milestone Shopping Center, example, Clarksburg Outlets. I know Circle Gate Drive, there are Rolling Hill Apartments right near Seneca Valley High School. There have been some issues, as well as the 6th District with the Cider Mill community, with some serious drug issues there. We've had some violent acts that have occurred there as well. So again, working with HOC and trying to develop a plan, we put more cameras there. And it was very interesting. We put a camera there in order to deal with the theft from auto issue that the community was very, very engaged in and upset about. And when we told them we were going to move that particular camera and put it in another strategic location in order to deal with some of the violence, they really didn't want to move that camera. They wanted another camera. And we understood their feeling, and we're working with them in order to be able to provide them some additional resources. I know HOC is actually working on getting additional cameras in that particular location as well. So next slide. So again, we just talked about the cameras. So 6 mobile security camera trailers that we have currently. Again, these have been very effective. In the areas in which we've placed them, we've seen the crime go down in the areas that we've put them at. We had an issue with the McDonald's at Georgia and Randolph, right across from the 4th District station, with young people really kind of coming into the McDonald's community and creating some problems. We're starting to also see other businesses, private sector, actually put up these types of cameras. I don't know if you've been to the Home Depot on Shady Grove. I utilize that as an example in Gaithersburg, where they have one right at the entrance. And the blue light is constantly going on, and I know they have other security there. But those are the things that we want to work, again, in partnership with many of our business community in order to do that. We do have one fixed automated license plate reader in the 3rd District, where we have a trailer also that we can move from one location to another. And then we have, on our police vehicles, we have approximately 500 LPR units that the officers can get alerted to when they are in service, that actually addresses crime in real time. Again, these are hits that we get for felony vehicles, cars that have been entered into the system that's a felony, again, carjackings, stolen vehicles of the like. So those can be really, really productive for us to be able to catch those vehicles as, in motion. So next slide. This is, again, as you all know, the drone first responder program is going well. Currently, we had some delays in getting it off the ground in the 4th district, but the good news is a little bit over a week ago, we have Raven 2 that's now activated. So Raven 1 has been going since mid-November. That's actually in downtown Silver Spring. Raven 2 is in downtown Wheaton. And now we're waiting to see what are some of those results from the second deployment. Again, just to remind the committee and the community that we do not do active but proactive patrols with these drones or proactive surveillance. We are just doing what we again real time, particularly with the live 911 system. This has become very, very productive. Again, the dashboard is available to the public. We encourage people to constantly look at that. Tell you how many total calls we responded to. It will also actually note about the deployment, how many deployments we did that assisted us without having to actually dispatch a police unit. As a result, because the drone is able to get there, we're able to see what is actually occurring, and sometimes we can tell the patrol officers that they're not needed because it's not that type of a situation, that it's not a police matter, or it may be something that really a police officer doesn't need to respond to. We also know that the numbers of times that the drone is actually the first on scene. We're seeing a great response time with the drone, and sometimes about a minute, a little bit to a minute and a half. So much success there. And again, we've got some successes. We had a repeat shoplifter that was hitting the CVS store right in Montgomery Hills, right at the right off the Beltway at Georgia Avenue. This individual with multiple events went into the CVS and actually was stealing from the CVS store. On this particular day, we were able to get the drone up in the air, and this individual was literally just putting, as much goods in a bag, a large trash bag. The individual was actually seen by the camera on the drone getting on a metro bus. The metro bus was then followed into downtown Silver Spring. We were able to get the metro bus stopped, and we were able to arrest that individual and then be able to charge him with many of the events that had occurred in previous times, as well as on that particular time. On one such night, we had a case of we were dispatched for an irate person with a knife in a Nike store in Ellsworth Street. When the drone actually responded before the officers, and the drone actually observed that the person did not have a weapon in their hands, and that relayed that information to the responding officers and allowed for a de-escalation response, and that was very helpful. Also, we were dispatched for a possible armed person with a mental health condition. The drone again arrived before the officers, and it also observed that the person didn't have a weapon. There was no threat, and again, the officers were allowed to respond safely, and there was a positive outcome there without any further interaction. So that is, again, this is where we're seeing some very positive outcomes as a result of the pilot in such a short period of time, in about a 3-month period, and we're looking for more positive outcomes as that as well. The next slide. We can go to the next slide. That was the dashboard I speak of. When you look at the chart itself, again, you look at the total calls that we responded to, and the times we had to avoid even dispatching a patrol unit. You will see the top crimes that were actually being dispatched to, the top 10. That starts with theft and larceny, which also includes shoplifting. You look at disturbances and nuisances as the second piece. And again, we look at suspicious situations as a part, and assaults. Those are your top 4, trespassing top 5 incidents that we actually respond to. Okay, next slide. And again, okay. So next we talk about our again, Violent Crime Information Center, also known as a real-time crime center. Again, right now, currently, when we first initiated this this program, again, as a pilot, we looked at having contractors that were actually that will actually do the work, doing analysis and, again, monitoring cameras at different locations, public cameras throughout the county. The problem is that our two contractors actually went and found other jobs, which is something we couldn't control. So what we did is that we actually brought in two retired officers on a contract to have them actually work inside of and it has actually proved to be very, very beneficial because these are officers who have been around, experienced investigative in so many capacities, and they've been able to help out and really communicate with the rest of the officers the value of utilizing this. And we just not only use it for just patrol responses, but we utilize it for investigators. When they need additional work done while they're on a crime scene, information that they might be able to pull up camera footage that might be able to help individuals with information moving forward. So you see the different districts that are using it. The 3rd district, Silver Spring, is our highest, followed by the 4th district, which are our two busiest police districts. So again, we're trying to encourage our officers to utilize this as a resource that's going to provide them to, again, look for positive outcomes. So next slide. So our crisis response resource section, this is what we have been able to actually move up over the past year, and it'll be able to be very beneficial. So we have these 2 units. First, our crisis intervention team, which is 1 sergeant. We have currently 5 officers. They are, again, responding in real time to mental health calls for service. So again, it's 1 unit, right, that's primarily working during our daytime hours. But they've been very helpful in many calls for service. We are waiting for, we're very close to hiring I should say Health and Human Services is close to hiring a supervisory therapist who will work with this team hand in hand. That person will actually provide a lot of counseling and actually can be the lead in many situations how to handle some of these mental health calls. So we're waiting for that. We had that over some time, but there have been delays in getting that position actually hired. So we're looking forward to that coming soon. Our behavioral assessment and administrative unit, again, we have 1 sergeant, 1 officer, 2 temporary officers, and 2 professional staff that works with, our Health and Human Services on long-term matters, particularly with individuals who are suffering from autism, or families who have autistic children, as an example, even the adults. Again, outreach that we're doing in the Alzheimer's and dementia community, which is, again, large because sometimes we see where there's constant, someone who may actually walk away from their caretakers, right? Whether it's at a facility or whether it's at someone's home. And we can provide them with the necessary tips on some of the things that they can do to help prevent those incidents from happening. So that's been very productive. And again, they work with a variety of different groups, as well as our Crime Solvers program and our community engagement group. I would go back to our CIT team, just highlight that they handled almost 900 calls for service that were directed to patrol in 2023. The total numbers were actually 886. So that's 886 calls that our patrol officers didn't have to respond to and spend an incredible amount of time, and this is the work that the CIT team has done. I wanted to go to the next slide to highlight some really success stories. So you see there the one where we had a grateful mother who praises our department our officers after her autistic son with safe recovery who had walked off. Again, we had another story of, and I want to go back to that one, I guess, because it was a very, very hot day and a thunderstorm was approaching on that particular day. And the officers actually worked very efficiently and actually found, I believe, the son in an area that wasn't too far away, but canine officers also searched the woods with their service dogs in order to find the child, and he was actually found in a wooded area near the Croydon Creek Nature Center. Again, Officer Reyes and Officer Stoughton, who had done some work with the, who continued to do his work in the autism community, also highlighted how much of their work was highlighted on I believe it was Fox 5, on the work that they've done. CIT and patrol dealing with the paranoid schizophrenic subject burning clothing at a gas station. They responded to a gas station in the county where the subject was actually burning his sweatshirt near the gas pumps. CIT officer was able to respond and able to take that person into custody without any issues, and able to assess the person who was suffering from a mental health condition, and that he wasn't taking his medication. So again, not only was working with the unit, but also following up with the mental health court in order to be able to give that information, give that individual the help that was needed. We've also, CIT and 3D partnered up with Interfaith Works and Shepherd's Table to provide backpacks at Progress Place. And Progress Place has really been a challenge for us, because in 1 month, back this past December, we had 121 calls for service at Progress Place alone. Not only us and fire rescue, but at 18 of those calls, we did have our crisis intervention team that were actually on the scene there. And again, we're working with our stakeholders there to help educate.
I'm so sorry, could you say that number again?
So there were 121 calls.
I mean, that's wild. And then how many times were we able to get your CIT?
18 out of the 121 times.
Thank you.
Okay. And again, that's, those are, when you don't have the CIT teams, then you have to have the patrol units, right, that are responding there all times of the day and night. Again, working with Progress Place to educate, assess, and address issues for public safety service at those locations. So that's our PowerPoint, our presentation, and we'll be able to answer any questions you have.
Well, first off, thank you very, very much for all that you do, and not just for today, but for every day. We know we never thank our very fine police officers and all of our first responders enough. People seem to be able to very quickly find fault, but they don't very quickly find praise, and we're here to thank you.
Thank you.
And not literally, because you risk your life every day for all of us. And Chief, I think we have to mention that you have announced that you're going to be retiring, but I know that you continue to be very, very concerned about Montgomery County and have for many, many years, and we sincerely thank you. Though there's going to be a whole lot more praise than this morning. I mean, get used to it. But we certainly thank you on a personal level as well as other levels for everything you've done. And I think it should be noted that I have had some conversations with Council President Andrew Friedson about how we can publicly have the public become more aware of the awards ceremonies that we attend, that you attend. There's people who literally risk their lives that the public maybe is aware of, and more than likely not. And the people that risk their lives just never receive enough thanks. And you did mention Sergeant Kep. I had the pleasure, I know others have had the pleasure of visiting with him, and nobody can have a better attitude than Sergeant Patrick Kep. He's just unbelievable. He said he's coming back, and as far as I know, all of us, I told him, I said it might be the only thing that the county council could agree on 11-0, that he should come back. So he's just unbelievable. And I do agree with you on the retired program. to bring people back. I mean, I've never understood why somebody who's, and let's just make up a number, someone that's worked for Montgomery County for 38 years, I'm making up a number, but if somebody has worked for Montgomery County a long time, why in the world wouldn't we want them to come back if they would like to come back on a part-time basis or any other basis? This is the brain trusts that we have, and why not utilize them? I just never understood that, and not just for the police. I've never understood that for any person. So I'm glad that we're working on that. You mentioned on the drone and the shoplifting and the response is faster. You know, if the big box stores, and I think Ms. Farag pointed this out, that larger stores have said, well, you know, it's not worth it. By the time the police get there, I'm not even going to. If we can stop, many times it's the same person over and over for a variety of reasons that are stealing. And so if we can stop, if we can get that person to stop and to get them assistance so that they could stop beyond, I think we'd all be much better off. So I believe that drones might be able to help us in that. And of course, technology in general. We need to use technology as best we can in every program. We talked about the civilians, and I know that if we're using sworn officers, by the time a sworn officer gets on the street, it's 6 months in the academy. It's all of these other issues. A civilian could be hired much faster as long as they're qualified to do the job. I think that makes a lot of sense, so that we can get people to do the work as quickly as we can. And you talked about the juveniles, and we all are concerned. Nobody wants anybody to be treated unfairly, you or us or anybody else. But we also need to make certain that the public is safe. We need to make certain that that young person gets the information to us so that we can help and help them. I mean, if you can't talk about it, and in some cases, I understand even if the parent says, tell them what we can't require that. Well, it's a problem. Years ago, and I've talked about this before, but years ago I was on the task force for gangs, and they talked about prevention, intervention, and suppression. And I have to tell you, years ago, and it continues to be, we cannot arrest our way out of these problems. Suppression, though at times it is needed, not to say that at times it's not, but suppression cannot answer every problem we have. And so we need to figure out how we can prevent the situation from occurring. And I got two other things to say. On the behavioral assessment and administrative unit slide that you had, you mentioned that there's 2 temporary officers. I'm assuming that means that there are 2 officers who are temporarily assigned. I don't want the public to think that we have temporary officers.
Yes,
Nor do I want the officers to think they're temporary.
No, it's temporarily assigned from another unit.
Okay.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
Right.
And with that, I have a feeling my committee members have something to say. So who wants to go? You want to go first, please?
Sure. All right. First, thank you for the thorough report and for the focus that you've put on prevention and the various ways in which you have been flexible to respond to the short staffing and the changes that have taken place during and post pandemic. I know that you do a lot of great collaboration with the Street Outreach Network, and you mentioned them here. I wondered if you could just talk a little bit more about that.
So, generally we have had, and traditionally, and, we've been working with the Street Outreach Network since its inception. And much of it centered around what Council Chair Katz just noted in regards to gang suppression. That's how we really kind of began our relationship, because it was really created during that tenuous time that we had with gang activity in the county, which still exists. It's not totally gone away. And so much of what we do is, again, understanding, like when we have, and I'll give an example where we had violent acts that were occurring in Germantown, over the last couple of years, and we had retaliatory shootings, to be quite frank, right? We had we received information that young people were kind of, going back. There was, beefs over social media, and a lot of that was really sparking that. And so in a collaborative effort, right, us knowing a little bit about what we know, but also the Street Outreach Network has the ability sometimes to communicate with, they know who is involved, and a lot of times they might get information shared with them that may not necessarily get shared with the police. And it can be vice versa, right? We get information and they don't know, but it then allows them to establish a strategy in order to be able to kind of go boots on the ground and actually go talk to these young people and have a conversation, not only with the young people themselves, maybe even the parents or somebody else that's influential in that young person's life, to try to get them, to deter them from stopping to continue in this whirlwind of really violent acts. So these are the examples. This is us being as proactive as possible, and also having positive interactions with some of the kids that they have in their program, where there's after-school programs that they have, or some sort of recreation. In fact, just the other day, I reached out to Luis because I have a friend of mine who has just started a outdoorsman type activity nonprofit for young people, and he, getting them involved in fishing and hunting and those types of outdoor activities. And I said to my friend, I said, well, I think you guys need to talk, right, to be able to expand upon that, and I think that's something that's going to probably take off. But these are, again, these are the opportunities that we have, the information that, that we have in regards to individuals being involved in illegal activities and our delinquent acts, particularly our younger people, in some of the schools and beyond, but it's information sharing, right? And then not only are you gathering the information, but you're acting on it and doing it in a way that we think is most productive in order for us, i.e., what is the ultimate goal? You have safer community and you're preventing other further acts from happening.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's so key, the collaboration there, and I appreciate the information sharing that has been happening between MCPD and the Street Outreach Network. Obviously, another place where we'd like to see information sharing improve is between MCPS and the Street Outreach Network. That's kind of like a school-by-school thing, as we've talked about. We see some schools that have really leaned successfully into that, and others that have not. Your CEOs are able to provide some of that information, but really it would be, conversations continue with MCPS, as we all know. But I think that this is a key point too, because, to the question of the inability to question youth in the same way for law enforcement at this point, given the state law, being able to leverage some of those relationships to get some of that information about what we can be doing on the preventative side. It's something it sounds like you're doing, and that we also obviously need to be doing on the council side, and with HHS and so on. As I was pulling up some information that we have been able to get analysis of, why we're seeing these increases in carjackings, for example. And a lot of the analyses that we're seeing have to do with the cutback of programming during COVID. To your point about, you making that connection between your two friends doing good work here to support the youth. It's really going to be important for us, if we want to reduce some of these youth carjackings and other things, to be building up, leaning into programming like that, and finding ways to make sure we are getting that information where, that's not in violation of state law, obviously, but, noting that we do have other ways to get it. Also appreciate you talking about some of the work that you're doing with Progress Place. I know a lot of us on the council have had conversations with Interfaith Works about the struggles over there, and the need to have some kind of plan in place to address what's really been spiraling. So I know that obviously our MCOTs are extremely, extremely understaffed. And you're looking to fill in the gaps with our CIT teams, with with community engagement officers and all of the different ways that you can, noting also that obviously NCBD again is also dealing with its own staffing issues. But as we move forward, at least in the immediate, are there ways that we can be helpful that with moving around? What would be most helpful in the immediate for addressing some of what we're seeing at, for example, these hotspots like Progress Place? Or can you tell us more about plans you have for addressing numbers like 121 calls in a month?
Well, I think, again, it requires us to have a continued conversation with our partners like at HHS, right? In order to come up with a strategic plan on how to address this. I mean, again, as much as everybody is really all in on addressing our mental health issues, it is such a widespread issue throughout the county. I know, we're even beginning to try to capture statistics on the times that the patrol officers are actually requesting for mobile crisis team assistance, but yet their workload is so heavy, right, is that they are not always readily available. And so it does warrant us to say, okay, what are our hot spots? When we look at Progress Place of that being an issue, is it better to have more resources there readily available, and can be, but still you have this other demand, right, that's pulling at everybody in order to be able to address it. So, if we had a magic wand, we'd really, we'd look at being able to assess that and address that in a very short period of time. That we don't have. So now we deal with what we do is to be able to get our folks again trained up, right? And if they have to handle it, right, and they've been handling this. This is not new, right? This is not new to us. This is something we focus on, and we want to readily avail ourselves to be able to pass, the person on to the right resource, to the right asset that's going to help them most of all, right? Whether we have to get them to a hospital in a short period of time, or they need other psychiatric assistance at that very moment. Those are the challenges, and I think, again, we need to look at the assessment. We really need to know where the data is that suggests that these are the hot spots in the county that has a higher demand for service. And again, as I was talking to Dr. Bridgers the other day and Dr. Santiago, just getting input about, what the crisis center, right, the high volume of work that's happening there, right, and where even the mobile crisis teams are sometimes having to kind of be redirected to help out there and not be readily available for the officers on the street. Mm-hmm. So those are significant challenges that we have to continue working up with more resources. I know that people are trying to hire and come, but right now for us to be able to handle it, to me it's an all hands on deck effort. Mm-hmm. That's what, right.
Well, I appreciate that, and we're going to have another conversation about that this afternoon, because obviously this is top of mind for everyone, and so I appreciate Councilmember Luedtke for bringing this conversation to the forefront. It's a huge deal, and we're really seeing the snowball effects, the domino effects, when we don't have the folks who are supposed to be in place to be responding to mental health issues or behavioral health issues, for example. When there's not enough of them, then it's falling on you and all of these other places, and we're seeing those spiraling effects. So obviously we need kind of systemic improvement to the system, but we also need some temporary emergency fixes. And if there might be some key places where, even just as a temporary solution, where we should be relocating some of our clinicians, some of our key folks, as a Band-Aid, as we're looking at our systemic overhaul. That's something that I think that we should support on the council, and that I would hope that the county executive would support your recommendations on that as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Luedtke.
Thank you. And to echo our chair's sentiments about Sergeant Kep and his work ethic, he is inspiring, and And I might be a little bit of a mother hen, and I may check on him more than he wants me to, but I feel compelled to do so, and I appreciate his good humor with me, and also his persistence and true care for the community. So, couple of questions, and one of them is maybe for Ms. Farag, or you may know too. Of the homicides that we have had in 2023, how many were firearms related?
I think it was 62%. It's in here.
Okay, and for the other 38%, what was the?
That could be blunt force trauma, could be stabbing, but that's most of what we're seeing there.
Okay.
Majority firearms.
Predominantly firearm
Yes.
related. Okay. And I know, Chief Jones, you mentioned the Child Interrogation Protection Act. I know we've all talked about that a lot of time. I know Annapolis is very, very busy right now with a great many things. I note that as originally drafted, as it exists presently, it has two different segments to it. One that talks about custodial interrogations, and that's where the prohibition is on talking to a child in a custodial interrogation setting without first consulting with a lawyer, and that they must be able to consult with a lawyer. They can't waive that right. The other piece does have an exigency provision. But one of the things that I've seen play out, and I'm not just talking about here because that law passed and went into effect before I came here, that in other training work I did across the state with law enforcement, they went, I can't talk to children. But that's not exactly what it says. And so what words would help clarify that so that we have a better understanding of custodial interrogation versus general questioning? Or is it that there's pushback from the public defender's office that's causing this to have an issue where it has effectively become you can't talk to a juvenile at all?
Well, I think to me, there's an interesting dynamic, right? So, in any criminal investigation, adult or juvenile, when you have the ability to actually Mirandize, right? Read someone their rights, about their right to an attorney, and do they want to talk to us, yes or no, right? And there are adults who say, nope, I want an attorney and I don't have anything to say, and the interrogation is over, right? But what happens is there may be an opportunity at a later time that an attorney may say, my client wants to share some information, okay?
Right.
Maybe it may not, it's not all about necessarily a confession, but it's about, okay, let me tell you who else is involved and what is actually happening behind the scenes here.
Strategy.
Right?
There's strategy that they're handling their own defense.
So they're handling their own defense, but they're also providing some intelligence that might say, hey, this is going to continue to happen because this is what I know, right? And sometimes, in a world of where we live now, that's important information if we get that. But there's the time is of the essence. It may not necessarily rise to the point of exigency,
right?
But I will say that what I've seen over the past few years, when we look at a lot of the violent acts that are occurring in the county, a lot of these acts are retaliatory acts. They're, because somebody shot somebody over in this neighborhood, and it's a group of individuals who knows who did it. They may not even tell us, the police, right, who they might have witnessed said events, and won't tell us because in their minds, we're going to get payback. So there's going to be a retaliatory act because we know who did it and we're going to go after them. And in fact, they actually do that, right? Because then we go to another crime scene where someone has been shot, injured, maybe dead, unfortunately, and yet now it takes us a little bit of time to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And so what I've been very adamant about, and I know this is a matter of fact, right? And I know that people have a lot of feelings, for example, like police officers in schools. But the one thing that I know that our SROs or CEOs, as we call them now, the value that they brought was the fact that they were able to deter or prevent, because somebody who they developed a relationship with in school, right, came to them and actually provided information that says, this is going to happen, right? This is what I've heard. This is what I know. And we've been able to prevent some events in this county, which has been very fortunate to be quite, but it's out of sight, out of mind, right? Most people, you don't hear about it, you don't know about it, it didn't happen, okay? But the reality is that's what we want. We'd like to be able to say that we have a very low of violent crime statistics throughout our county because we're able to actually deter some of this. So the point being is going back to really where the crux of your question. So by not having the ability to have that conversation in real time, because that's really when we have an interaction with a young person, a youth under the age of 18, when they're arrested, we have a very small window of opportunity in communicating with them. It's at the time of arrest, and that's it. There is no, when you look at their cases going through the Department of Juvenile Services and through the juvenile courts, our officers are rarely brought into any of those conversations. Okay, whether there is diversion or intervention, which we totally understand, right? But the reality is, unless the case goes to trial, that's the only time the officer is even going to see that kid in that setting as a result of that particular offense at any given time. And that's a more formal right under the purview of the juvenile court. And so all I'm saying is that I have seen, and I've been a part of investigations, and many of us at this table and behind me have as well, that we've had the ability to talk to young people who have been involved in delinquent acts. And not only do you get the point of having a conversation with them, and then sometimes even having a small opportunity, even maybe mentor, right, to provide, I remember having a conversation with a young kid at Watkins Mill High School one day, and we're having a conversation about him robbing kids of their lunch money. He was a bully, right? He's robbing the kids of their lunch money. And I said to him, do you realize what you're doing is actually a criminal offense? That's called robbery. It's called strong arm robbery, right? And he looked at me like I had 3 heads, right? And then it just kind of like it came to him, and he says, oh, I never knew that. That's the opportunity. Now, that's on the front side, right? But on the back side of that, to have that conversation with them, to get them to understand what they've done, you're having a conversation with them during an interrogation to say to them, this is what you shouldn't do, right? This is why this is illegal. And you're dealing with young minds, clearly, right? That you want to make sure that it guides them and look, some kids you're going to get through to, some kids you're not, right? Some kids have made the decision, this is the way I'm going to live. Right? And we see that we see that wall that's developed sometimes, but all we want to say is, can we have an opportunity? And I want the opportunity to be at the time that we are able to sit down and talk to those kids at the time of the intervention, you might say, or interaction as a result of them being in custody. I don't want to wait 3 months, 4 months, 6 months later, when in the middle of that, you are now still having continued crime as a result of what they may have already known and could have shared with you to help you prevent that. That's the crust of what I'm really getting at. Because yes, there is a provision in the law that speaks to exigency. What does that mean? What that means is, let's say, you got some kid that is a part of a group that's going around, killing or shooting at people throughout the community real time, right? And, we caught him, but we didn't catch the rest of them. That's exigency, right? We got to do it now because we want to save lives right now, right? Because this is in motion. And of course, what he's sharing with you, right, may not be able to be utilized against him in a court of law, right? But the reality is you're now working on trying to save more lives. That's where, that's where they kind of gave that ability for us to really kind of address that. But, again, that, and this as well, Councilmember Luedtke, those become debatable issues in the world of legal eagles, right? Those are things we sometimes will have to face when those days come to be in front of a judge in order to try to see, is it admissible or isn't it admissible?
Right.
So,
Right.
But again, I just say this again, in a world that says that you can still have the ability to say to folks, right, you have a right. You can speak to the police or not speak to the police, right? You have a legal right, or you can consult with your parents to speak to the police or not speak to the police. But to say directly that you have to have an attorney representing you without any questions asked, I just, that's where I think we have a difference of opinion there. So.
And I know, as we said last week at the CJCC meeting, that Juvenile Justice Day is coming up in Annapolis on February 13th. But the juvenile law reform, more omnibus bill, if you will, that was filed last week by the Speaker and House Judiciary Chair and Senate President and Senate Judicial Proceedings Chair, they have hearings this week. So one is on the 9th, one's on the 8th, and one's on the 9th. Are you planning, they don't address that bill does not address the Child Interrogation Protection Act, but it does address some of the other things that have come up in terms of the procedural nuts and bolts of time from coming in contact with a juvenile and first involvement and record keeping and processes. Is that something that you or the department will be taking positions on?
Yes, more than likely, yes. We will take positions. I know I've also been in contact with the Maryland Chiefs Association to have my input put in regard to the act as well. But we are closely monitoring those bills. Yes. Always knowing, the phrase I used to use was, we want to be left of boom, right? So to your point, whether it's juvenile crime or adult-related crime, prevention and intervention, that's a lot of heavy work on the front end to prevent other things. And you talked about the behavioral assessment and administrative unit. You know that there's behavioral threat assessment policy for K-12 schools that applies under the Safe to Learn Act, and the behavioral threat assessment teams that must form and work with each of our school systems throughout the state require someone with law enforcement expertise to serve as a part of that behavioral threat assessment team. How has that been affected by not having officers who are regularly stationed in the schools? Well, I believe that, again, we've been actively engaged with MCPS, and that's a daily occurrence with their interactions. I know Chief Parker alone, he's been involved in a lot of issues surrounding public school safety with his officers providing additional support. But our community engagement officers are led by Captain Satinsky, right, who also oversees the behavioral assessment teams as well for NCIT. But one of the things is that we are constantly engaged with MCPS to have the conversations about particularly students that we may be having issues with throughout in different different schools throughout the county. So I am not. I don't see MCPS not engaging with us. I think that's been, the relationships have been developed, and we know that there's been some ups and downs of personnel accordingly, and there are things that we're constantly talking about centered around public safety, and I think we'll continue to have those conversations.
And one last piece, and this came to light during Councilmember Mink's questioning, and as she was emphasizing strategic plans, and I always like to think about in this sort of landscape with public safety and behavioral health, it's a continually evolving strategic plan, because it's check, recheck, reassess, redeploy. And that's also a function not just of the factual situations that you have, but staffing, as Councilmember Mink noted. So with that, I know there's also a bill that was introduced last week by the administration related to assisted outpatient therapy treatment, AOT. Is that something that the department, either directly or via the Chiefs and Sheriffs Association, will be taking a position on?
I am not quite sure if we're taking a position on that one. I'd have to do some research on that. I have not been, nobody has reached out to me specifically about that particular bill.
Okay. The reason I raise it is just because, as we know, and again, it talks about peace officers transporting, and right now it's the statute says have to be transported to the nearest. And this, one of the first words that's changed in the law would be to nearby, right? So it allows some flexibility in assessment. Officers know, EMS providers know, like, if I've got this situation and this is the place that's going to be best for them to go based on this behavioral health manifestation, this is where I want them to go, right? Also flexibility and not always going to an ER, for example. But I know that has a hearing in the House on February 14th and in the Senate on February the 20th. And since that issue and sort of the frequency or frequent users of the higher acuity cases affect your work, the department's work, affect our MCOT's work, affect everyone's work who has to continually respond to them, and of course lends itself to our ER wait time issues that we have. That was something I wanted to make sure was brought to your attention. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Frog, do you have any closing remarks before we move on to the next topic, please?
I just wanted to let members of the public know that the Public Safety Committee will be having a very in-depth briefing on police department staffing on March 18th. It's such an interrelated issue, dealing with the service delivery to the community and crime in general. I asked the department about 60 questions. I'm actually surprised they're still talking to me, but we will have a lot of data points for you on that date.
Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. Very, very briefly, I just wanted to circle back to the schools briefly, and just note that, I think it's important to remind ourselves that, we know things about what's most effective for intervening with kids in those moments. And then we also know things about how, as you have mentioned, Chief Jones, about the importance of using our sworn officer time as wisely as possible. And so what we know about effective intervention, especially with young people, is that to prevent a kid from repeating a behavior, scaring them about the severity of their actions, research has shown that that's not our most reliable tactic, that can be counterproductive. And what has been shown to be effective at reducing repeated behavior is a well-implemented, and I highlight that, for MCPS as well, is a well-implemented restorative process that has the offender hearing from their victim, taking accountability for their actions, taking action to repair them, receiving what services they may need in that moment. So I just wanted to note that for the record and appreciate the conversation.
And I appreciate that, and that should be a much deeper conversation over time, because I have to tell you, I don't know that the restorative justice that we have been doing is working. We need to have all of those discussions. Having said that, we're still going to move on to the next topic. Thank you.
If I may, just quickly.
Yeah, please, absolutely.
I
Has
just
anybody
wanna
ever
make-
told you no? Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the council just really pays attention to Circle 13, the victimization data, just for any future conversations or with other groups that you meet with, because I think it's really important to look at who is being victimized in Montgomery County. When we look at who's committing acts and we look at who is actually being victimized, I think that information is very important.
Thank you. Very good, and I appreciate that. All right, I believe you all are going to stay for this next, I don't know what everybody is. Yeah, okay. So, Ms. Frog, on the next topic is the anti-hate task force recommendations. And, Captain Satisky is coming forward. But as we begin, I did want to publicly thank Councilmember Glass for proposing all of this and all of his hard work on the anti-hate task force. And we've also received a letter from him about it, what we're going to be discussing today. And with that, if you would, unless you all have something in the beginning, if you could lead us through the packet.
Sure. As you alluded to, then Council President Glass put together a temporary task force on the council side amidst a very disturbing growing number of reported bias incidents in the county. They wanted to have the task force examine all aspects of government response to bias incidents and hate crimes. And that task force submitted a final report with recommendations, and it was broken down by different cohorts. On December 5th, 2023, the task force presented its recommendations, and their PowerPoint presentation is attached for your reference. Each cohort had a variety of different recommendations, but there were some common themes that emerged, providing the public with public service announcements and other guidance on how to report bias incidents and hate crimes, providing additional training to staff on bias and hate crimes, and creating a reporting hotline. I don't have information for 2023, but according to the bias incident report, annual report from 2022, there had been 157 reported bias incidents, which was about 10% more than those reported in 2021. They had reported at the time, the department had, that it was the highest number of bias incidents ever reported to MCPD since their reporting structure had changed. Now, they've been providing a monthly summary in 2023, and it looks like those bias incidents are much, much higher for 2023. So I've attached the PowerPoint presentation. This is limited to police department for public safety. There's a little bit of tangential overlap or collaboration with the state's attorney and things, but this was the bulk of it. So I'm going to turn it over to the police department to go through what they're doing now, what is on their radar to do, and what's necessary to make all of that happen.
Okay, please, Chief.
So if I could just begin when the task force was created, and I had the opportunity to speak before the task force at the beginning, and I also was present for their final report when they reported out. But one of the things that I highlighted as we ended our other session talking about MCPS in our school systems. The one thing that I thought was very important for them to know was that we have seen an incredible spike of hate crimes and bias incidents within our school system. As the MOU and MCPS policy requires that those incidents be reported out on and police reports be provided, and clearly that's being done because daily I received update reports on incidents that occur at our schools. But again, it's at an all-time high. And as we've had incidents that have occurred, of course, as everyone knows, across the world, that is also impacting many of our religious communities and communities of color in so many ways. That has also kind of perpetuated itself into the school system as well. And so it becomes sort of a joint effort where there needs to be an educational campaign that I still believe that needs to be really relevant in helping particularly our young people understand that their actions are painful, right? That they may not think that it's going to be painful, but in some regards, depending upon who the actual victim is, these acts are directed to, can create some pain. So I just began there because I wanted to make sure that there was some clear understanding. And again, this is something that I think we constantly focus upon when it comes to educating our community about the difference between a hate crime and a bias incident. And, what does that mean and what does that look like? So Captain Sidney, he oversees our community engagement division. He is actively involved with a variety of different groups to include our religious community, several sects of our community, in order to be able to best communicate with them and address their concerns along the way. But he is the overseer of these reports that come in and actually get directed out. Again, hate crime incidents are investigated by our department. Again, this is something, across the state, we are the highest number reporting agency. There are many members in the state that are trying to play catch up, other law enforcement groups who are really just beginning to be educated on what is required by the state itself in order to report this. And I've worked with a lot of other leaders throughout the state because they've come to us and asked us, well, how, what do you do? Why do you do it? How do you do it? All of the alike, in order to be able to really make sure that people are aware of what's happening. And this is why we actually put forth our report. But there is also, I know there were some concerns about some of their questions amongst the task force, that I think they were not educated to what we do, not only as the investigative body, but also as the collecting the data, and as well as educating and informing our community about the variety of things that we do. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and I'll have Captain Satinsky kind of follow up on that piece.
Please.
Good morning.
Welcome. Good morning.
Jordan Stinsky, Captain, Community Engagement Division for the County Police. Thanks for having me here this morning. I'm not actually sure what else I can say. Chief already said most of it. Stole most of my stuff, sir.
You didn't even move your lips. I mean, that was pretty impressive.
Yes, you are. So I just kind of want to frame this a little bit. As the Chief said, we are, and have been for quite a long time, one of the only agencies in our state to actually capture non-criminal incidents regarding hate crimes under bias incidents. And if you go back and you look at the different state reports over the past few years, you'll see that we have a huge amount of incidents compared to other jurisdictions. Some may only have 2 or 3. But when you look at our actual verified crimes, we sit somewhere in the 2 or 3 area as well. The bias incidents are way up over 100 in some instances. This got incredibly higher with our MOU with MCPS, where they're required to report for all incidents. Now, honestly, there were some issues at first with how that was supposed to start up. There were some issues with MCPS reporting to us, misunderstandings. We got that figured out, and we're getting those. And as the Chief said, we do get a great deal of them from MCPS. As a matter of fact, for this year alone, almost 60% of all the bias incidents occurred within an MCPS school of some sort or another. And most of them are verbal. Okay, that's a lot of it. Some of it's whiteboard stuff where people are drawing things on whiteboards. Occasionally there's an etching into a desk. But it seems to be within the school system and mostly within our middle schools. Some of you may have heard me say this before. Middle school is not my favorite time of my life by any stretch. And and I have a middle schooler, so watching him go through it's been quite interesting.
Right.
But you change so much in that time frame, right? From 6 to 8 is great. And kids don't know their place in that time, and they do things and say things they shouldn't. And a lot of times, I've seen with my friends' kids, and even here, it's education that's needed, not us. Like, we should not be involved, and this is an MCPS thing, and they have things in place for that. And they've done pretty well in that, from what I'm understanding. Now, I can't give you a number to what they've done or any end result because they're not allowed to tell me, and I don't ask. But more often than not, the reports that I see when they come in from the school system, it says, will be handled administratively by MCPS. Education, deterrence, things along those lines. And I haven't seen, barring 1 or 2 incidents, repeated names, which is a good thing. It means something's working. But we are getting reports. And I have a feeling when we have new principals and teachers come in at the end of the school year, because I believe we're going to have an influx of them, we're going to see that reporting spike again because people don't exactly know when to report, when not to report, and how to handle that. So we'll see a little bit of that. One of the other things we do when these cases come in, they get reviewed by us in my division, and they're farmed out to the community service officer as well in that district for education. And if there's let's say a spike in incidents, they can assist in helping with that, reaching out, like the Chief said earlier, reaching out with that local faith organization or community group to kind of facilitate things. We also work with our Office of Human Rights and Director Jim Stowe and their partnership fund if there's a criminal aspect, and we will have that information passed on to the victim as well. The victims provided with that information through our victim advocates and our on-scene officers, as well as these pamphlets here that we created to kind of give them some sort of a direction so they understand what's going on. Of all the calls I get in the division about anything going on where I sit, almost all of them come down to, why can't you arrest this person for hurling a slur at me? That's almost every single time. And my whole answer to that is always the same thing. We have to be careful about criminalizing the First Amendment. Now, and I always say that following it up with, I don't agree with what the person said to you by any stretch, and it's hurtful and it's terrible and it never should have happened, but it's not a place for us to step in. I'm all about education. I'm all about empathy breeds understanding, exposure breeds understanding, And I think it's super important to have that. And having these forums, kind of like what the anti-hate task force, put out there about almost every single group had the same thing. People don't understand us. get together. What I'd like to see is to have each one of those group leaders get together and sit down together, because it seems they all have the same issue, right? To some degree or another. Others are very specific, but for the most part, relatively the same. I'd be happy to sit there and with my folks and whoever else we can get from HHS and Director Stowe's shop to come in and listen and take that information and put it out. So the CE has the Committee Against Hate Violence, which both Stowe and I sit on, as well as Chairperson Lisa Taylor. For the last year and a half, we've been looking at different ways to engage our community because, it's hard, right? Everyone was sitting at home on COVID doing this for a couple of years, and now we're back out in the world again, and people are learning how to do things again, and how do we re-engage our society outside of this, right? Not easy. So we discussed the phone number, which I believe was in part of this packet, having some sort of a dedicated phone number. We have been looking into it. There's obviously a media campaign that would go on, but also a technical side of it. How does it get routed? We have to figure that out. And a PSA we thought of, to have actually sit down with police, HHS, and different members of different groups, preferably from this task force, where we could say, hey, let's put this out there in 30-second vignettes to folks around the county. Hey, this is how you report. I hear a lot of times, I don't know how to report, or I'm afraid to report. We have the confidential tip line. We have our main number. I tell people all the time, report, please report. If you don't tell us, we don't know.
That's it.
We all know that there's a lot more of this going on out there than any one of us will ever know about. But people are afraid to call us for 1,000 reasons, and I get all of them. I really do. I implore you to call, and I know people are watching this, and they'll say, we can't. You can. No one's going to turn you away. Now, I'm going to tell you, are we going to make mistakes as police when we take these things in, whether it's our agency or other allied agencies in the county? Sure, going to happen. But we correct them as quickly as possible. There's an incident out there talking about where it took 2 weeks to get a police report. That's not exactly how it went down. It went down actually within about 2 days, and it turned out that that person contacted the Committee Against Hate Violence, who contacted us, and we got it corrected through an allied agency in the county. And it was really just a misunderstanding. That was it. It was a misunderstanding of how to report it and what to do. And once educated, it was handled. So those things we can handle. We implore the community to do that, to call us. The other part of the anti-hate task force, I think, is important. I have had some discussions with folks from the council about this group, and I said, and I'm very willing to sit down with anyone who wants to from that group so I can talk to them and give them an education. I'd be happy to let them know what we do, and not only give an education, but listen to them directly. Because look, they were sitting here, or in a big conference room, right, in front of you guys. They have, a lot of their concerns are us or HHS. I'm sure I could ask HHS, I'm not sure they would agree, but I could ask them to come join us to do that, to sit down and with Director Stowe, to have those conversations. Absolutely willing to listen and see what we can put into place. But there are places where the police department doesn't belong, right? And we've spent great pains over the last, especially 5 years, extricating ourselves as police from certain things. There are places where Health and Human Services should step in and help out and be that bridge, be that ongoing assistance and education. But we are always willing to be the clearinghouse and assist, and we will continue to do that. We will continue to post our monthly reports. I'm trying to figure out a way to make them a little more user-friendly, but again, that's a programmatic issue, not anything else. That's pretty much where we sit on these things. When they come through as far as an investigative arm, they go to our Criminal Investigations Division, to Assistant Chief Augustine's shop. They're handled, and they let us know the outcome of it, and we work with the victims or via the victim advocates to assist. Director Stowe's shop is absolutely involved when we have an outcome. So he knows. We can't obviously get into particulars of all the investigative processes, but at least we give them an overview so they understand what we've been doing and how we processed it through. And then Director Stowe's department can go through and kind of close out that victim advocacy on the other side. I hope that gives you kind of an overview of what we do here.
Sure. That's good. Anything else in addition, or?
You got anything else?
And I do want to state, again, when we're doing criminal investigations, we are not the final decider of fact of whether a case is actually prosecuted under the hate crime statute. That's the state's attorney's. Yeah. That's their decision to make. The state's attorney, John McCarthy, makes that decision. But we provide them with all of the details, and we walk with them hand in hand in order to prosecute. But again, at the end of the day, I just want to make sure the public understands we are not that final authority that makes that decision. So.
Did you have anything else to add? Because I have a few comments.
Oh, no, please go ahead.
Okay. First off, again, thank you for what you're doing. You know, one of the concerns that I had, and I had to leave early from the meeting when the anti-hate task force made their presentation. But one of my concerns has been all along, and we thank them for every one of the cohorts for their work and efforts, etc. But I always go back to Lester Holt's quote at the end of every NBC show, where he says, "Take care of yourself and each other." We have got to make certain that we are taking care of each other. And I appreciate everybody being concerned about their own community. I'm concerned about, but we have got to make certain that the communities that were there understand that they need to take care of their neighbor as well. And that is what I think part of this is missing. I think that the idea that they've come up with for the hotline, et cetera, all makes sense. We need to make it as easy and as simple. Someone needs to put in on our website hotline or anti-hate hotline, and that needs to appear, and so somebody can figure out what to do and how to do it. I mean, they're upset. They don't necessarily want to read 5 pages of information. They want to know what they need to know. I also believe that the re-victimization, and Councilmember Mink and I were just chatting about that. I think that has to be that someone realizes we want both sides to not be re-victimized. We don't want someone to be afraid to talk to the person that just bullied them or whatever they did. We want to make sure that they're comfortable. And I go back to the time in Gaithersburg where a young person, in this case, vandalized a synagogue. It's been a couple of years ago already. It's probably been longer than a couple of years. But he was caught. He faced the synagogue once, and part of it might have been because he was caught, that he realized the error of his way, and that he was going to maybe face something that he didn't want to have to face and go to incarceration, but he didn't. But what happened in that young person, and I believe that he's never had problems since. I mean, I don't know that for certain, but I believe that. But what happened with him is that he learned. To your point, ignorance is not illegal, but ignorance can get you to something that is. And that's what happened with him. And he thought he was being funny, and he was cute, and he was being a big shot with his 2 friends or 4 friends or whatever it was. But once he realized that how much hurt he was causing beyond him being a big shot, that's when the right thing kicked in. And that's what we need to be doing. So I think that, I guess, and my colleagues are going to speak here too, but I guess the question becomes, how fast can we do what is being suggested for the hotline, et cetera? Whether you need additional budgeting to do that. And we need to make certain that people are comfortable, please.
Well, Councilmember Katz, if you're going to give us money, we'll say yes.
What did you
If you're going to
say?
give us money, we'll say yes.
He didn't say that, and talking about re-victimization, go ahead, yeah.
As far as getting the number set up, it really is just a programmatic issue and trying to figure out a number that makes sense and easily that everyone can remember and it's out there. I've put a couple suggestions forward to our tech people. I'm waiting to hear back. So once we get that, we could design a campaign around that, and I have to talk to our emergency communication center as well to see how it would feed in. So those are just technical issues that have to be figured out. Once it's set up, my understanding is cost-wise, I don't believe it's a thing, unless I'm incorrect, because we did something similar with MCPS a while back. So I think it's just a process we have to work out. That's really it to that end. As far as our PSA campaign, so to speak, we have Chief Jones and Assistant Chief Frank put downstairs in our headquarters, basically it looks like a daily talk show. I don't know how to describe it.
The Chief Jones probably has one of those in there. Yeah.
If you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, sorry. And I don't know how else to describe it, just kind of give you a frame, like a comfortable setting, right? And I would like to have people come in and talk about that, and we have the infrastructure for that. I guess the the area, and I don't know anything about this, I have to research a little bit more, is how to get it out as a PSA and what the costs are for that. And I just don't know that at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's talking about our podcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, it escaped my.
Yes, a fancy word for getting something out, right?
Sounds good. Why don't I turn to Councilmember Luedtke, since you went first last time, please?
Perfect. Well, thank you for the reporting, and I'm grateful for the work that the work group did on this issue. I think both of you know that this is an issue that's been near and dear to me for quite some time, and again, something I think Chief Jones got to hear me present on in my prior life. And one of the things that was interesting for me, and an observation that you both made about this group that put this report together, was there was a disconnect on information, right? And because I used to do that work where you'd go out and work with, community organizations, like I worked with our supervisory special agents at FBI Baltimore, depending on which county you were in or who was busy that night. They did the federal side, and I would cover the state side, right? And talking to groups that the governor's office would arrange for us to do, or going out with Dave Engel from the MCAC. So one school system actually had Dave and I come, it was Howard County, and present to every one of their administrators so that they would understand why Maryland law is unique in that we capture both hate bias incidents as well as hate crimes. They're different things. Hate bias incidents are protected by the First Amendment. We don't like them. We don't want them. We do need to know about them because it's indicative of something else going on in that particular community, which is the policy reason behind why Maryland chose to include hate bias incidents in its reporting requirement. Helps us to better understand where to direct resources. But with respect to the K-12 environment, where, as you've noted, there's a high degree of reporting, most hate bias incidents in the educational setting are a form of bullying, but not all bullying is a hate bias incident. So, they are distinct, and because there's a separate legal requirement under Maryland state law for hate bias incident reporting, I appreciate the school system adjusting their internal sort of infographic flowchart on how to handle that. They were very receptive to, that information. But there are competing constitutional interests in the school setting. And kids, in my experience from talking to them about this, they get it when they have that opportunity to have that discussion, which is to say, right, these are always teachable moments where someone could be learning from the poor choice they made. But why your First Amendment right to say a thing that you might say out on the street, and it wouldn't be an issue because it would still be protected by the First Amendment, even if it was hate speech, is not so protected by the First Amendment in the context of K-12 public education, because it's the First Amendment butting up against your right to a free and appropriate public education, right? Which is why the school system has the ability to discipline students who engage in hate bias conduct and use things like restorative approaches to sit them down and say, let's have a talk. Let's talk about what this meant to the person you said it to and how did this play out. But I know that we are also in a position where, the department has been doing this work for a long time. You predated the state mandate on training on hate crimes and hate bias reporting. And I was appreciative of having Lieutenant Helton come with me to help lobby for passage of that bill back in 2020. And the pamphlet that you have there, Captain Satinsky, I know we used the AG's office to create the pamphlet that the AG's office now uses as a part of the hate crimes task force that was stood up. What do you think would be the best way to reach the community and have those open discussions where it allows them to really probe at those distinctions? Because that seems to always be the same topic that comes up time and time again. And it's labor intensive, but what do you think would be the best way to help, create community ambassadors who will be able to give out accurate information about the process for reporting, the why we report, the how to deal with this, even when it's, as you say, not something law enforcement needs to get involved in because it really truly was a bias incident. It doesn't take away the the impact on the affected community. So how do you think we can best empower our residents and our, community activists and those who are engaged to be ambassadors of that?
That's a great question. I think that one of the best answers is in person. I think Zoom is wonderful and it's given us a wonderful avenue, but it's still a barrier between people. And
Right.
to have that in-person conversation at the local level where our sergeants who run our community service officer programs in each of the districts are well-versed in this process, and they also know all of those local groups, and to get them together and have that discussion. Hey, what are your concerns? Here's what we can do. Here's what we can't do. And here's why. Even on the Committee on Hate Violence that I sit on at the county executives level, when we get other people that come in, new folks, this comes up right away about why couldn't you arrest for X or Y as a bias incident. And I have to go through and explain it. And I can kind of see some of the committee members like, oh, here he goes again. But it's
Right.
they just don't know. They just don't understand it. And I understand it's emotional. That's why in person I think is a little bit better so everyone can kind of have the same level playing field. And they can see it coming right from us.
Right.
And we're not hiding behind anything. Hey, this is what we can do. This is what we can't. I think the PSAs and the public service campaigns, such as these pamphlets, are great backups, but that in-person discussion is always better, at least in my view.
And I last week I attended the state Maryland Commission on Civil Rights had a hate bias reporting forum up in Baltimore, and I attended, and Dave Engel, the executive director of the MCAC, was there, and Dave and I were sort of talking in the back of the room, and the projections for 2023 for hate bias incidents reported across the state are going to be quite high. So the state's report, if you're asking, why did she just say 2023? It's 2024. It's because the annual report that the state police and the MCAC put out doesn't come out until around Labor Day every year for the year prior, because it takes a while to do all the data validation and the back and forth. And, while that trend is alarming, it's also, as you noted, a positive effect of doing better, having law enforcement mandated training for all jurisdictions, for every department, for every officer, both in the academy and every 3 years for in-service, so that they understand the reporting. Because there were a lot of goose eggs in the columns, depending on which county you were living in. Things looked a lot different in Western Maryland and the Eastern Shore than they did for our departments in Central Maryland who were engaged in reporting. So it doesn't necessarily mean that things are worse here than they are somewhere else. It's just that we're doing the reports. But there were a lot of fallacies that I heard manifested last week that residents, where there were residents who were there at the forum, and they would ask questions, where there seemed to be a belief that if you might belong to a particular group or class, protected class, you could not be engaged in hate bias against or a hate crime against that class, which has actually, and we had a case last year during Lunar New Year, no less, in California, that was an elderly Asian American group that was attacked by a Vietnamese American, right? And it was done based on ethnicity, and so that's a thing that I think is really hard for people to wrap their heads around. One, because of the why, it doesn't, why would you do that, right? It's hard to understand. But two, what do you think would be the things that are common misperceptions in the hate bias, hate crimes world that you think could be explained, even if, whether it's the department or our own Office of Civil Rights putting out like an FAQ, right? What do you think are the things that might need to be explained?
I think to your point, what you just said is one of the biggest ones, where people in the same class think they can't complain or they can't feel hurt because of what someone in the same class said. And that is a long-term societal thing. That's not going to be something that's fixed overnight. But it's about how the victim perceives the incident. That's what it's all about, right? So it doesn't matter where you're from, what it is, same, different, whatever. It's how the victim perceives the event. And I would ask people, absolutely call. It doesn't. Those are kind of things we have to have that discussion about. The second part, obviously, criminality versus non-criminality, First Amendment versus non. Where's the slippery slope of criminalizing the First Amendment? And I understand there are lots of emotions surrounding that, but we have to be careful. I had the opportunity to go overseas to another country to talk just about this stuff, and one of the Asian areas I was in, one of the countries, when I asked about this, said, how do you handle bias incidents. He goes, oh, you just go to jail. That was it. There was no investigation. You just go to jail. And when I explained our system of government and how things worked here, I got, that would never play here. You would just go to jail. That's it. And I asked then my follow-up, what if there's a crime involved? They said, oh, you'd never come out of jail. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I use that as an example to show where we are and to kind of show how that First Amendment, it has its positives and its negatives. But while words hurt, absolutely not taken away from that. People can say some terrible things. We can report it to us, which is great for reporting purposes, tracking to make sure people understand, and we can get services and have that restorative justice approach through HHS or MCPS as you know, needed or relevant. But it's important that we don't step in and arrest based on that, or
Right.
we don't take a position on
Right.
it as far as the law enforcement agency or any law enforcement agency in the bias incident, because we don't want to criminalize that First Amendment or even have that perception of that. So I think those are kind of the main topics that would be important, and understanding then how our process works once we get it and where that information goes. We're not putting out people's names in public. You're not seeing media releases with Councilmember Sidney Katz was victim of X or Councilmember Mink victim of Y. It's generalized data. The people that need to know, but that's it.
Right.
That's how we keep it, if that makes sense.
Yes,
So I
no,
think
it
there's a
absolutely
fear
does.
of re-victimization
Sure.
through the media or social media or whatever, because they report a victim reports an incident, and I fully understand that.
Yeah, and I mean, and one of the concerns that was raised when I spoke to the administrators in Howard County was, I don't want a child to be arrested, right? And this was for like vandalism on a desk, right? Let's see. And, you know, we said, we don't either, you know, but we want it captured because you don't know if you are self-selecting away from sharing the information. One, you have that opportunity to work with the child. You know, do you know what this means? Do you even know what this means, right? They may not. And it is educational, and it is an opportunity for restorative approaches to be deployed. But also, what if there's something else going on that the child was exposed to? That creates a different issue that the school may want to address, not within the context of school discipline, but there may be other issues of exposure for that child that is putting that child at risk. And so that's why it's important to not self-select away from sharing that information. And I certainly appreciate our teachers and our administrators for their willingness to have these conversations and to work with this, because it's a full community effort. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mink.
Thanks. I don't have too much to add, but wanted to circle back to just a couple of things. I think, like you're saying, education and communication here is really the key to so much of this, and I think you really highlight how important it is to make sure that we are communicating to folks not only how and when to report, but what will and what will not happen as a result of that. And so, and I think you've been very diplomatic about who should be responsible for communicating that, and appreciate your willingness to, you know, and you obviously, you are being proactive about doing that. But this really needs to be a shared load here. And so this is a conversation that obviously we need to be continuing with multiple branches. So, as well as MCPS, this is going to be an all hands on deck situation. You know, I think, that there are members of the public who are going to want to hear from you, like, we're not going to arrest people for X and Y. We can't, and also that's not effective. And also, you know, like, they're going to want to hear that from you instead of somebody else probably delivering that message, you know, as you're doing, obviously. But for a lot of this education and communication, there can be other messengers here, and that seems to be the theme for today, is not asking you to pick up all of the pieces for all of the different types of buckets of work that has to be done to solve some of these issues. And so this is, you know, a conversation that we're going to have to broaden and continue. And one of the recommendations that was brought up by the task force in regards to that communication was making sure that we are communicating not only in multiple languages, but in the spaces where these different communities are. Like, are we using the correct media outlets? Are we using the correct social media? There are some that are very specific to certain groups, and we need to make sure that we are talking to the right people to find out, to learn what those spaces are. And I say we because, again, you shouldn't be doing all of the communication. And this is obvious. This is not even just particular, of course, to hate bias incidents. This is, we need to be improving our communication with the community about many, many different things. But especially this one, we need to make sure that we're getting this in front of folks. And we need to make sure that we are funding those efforts as well. And with that, I will yield.
Thank you very much. Ms. Frog, did you have anything else to add?
No, just that I'll be looking at this as a budget issue when the various departments come up, and we'll deal with it in front of public safety at a later time too. So.
Very good. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. We are adjourned.